Well, filter-free America is where I wanna be. Arriving on the shining black shores of oil-soaked Lady Liberty, where justice not just blind, but deaf, dumb, and unkind. Thank God I'm filter-free. It's filter-free America.
Motherfucker!
Hello, filter-free America listeners. Welcome back to the Filter-Free America podcast. I am so happy you guys all made it before we locked and shut the doors and refused to let anybody else in. Guys, let me tell you about the one fear I have about this podcast. My one and only true fear I have about the Filter-Free America podcast is that one day I am going to just run out of interesting people with interesting stories to talk to, right? Because that's, as you know, that's the lifeblood of the Filter Free America podcast, is reaching out into the world and finding and meeting new interesting people who have a story that they would like to share, right? I worry about that. I was like, well, maybe it's going to go through a dry spell, and maybe the people I have on aren't going to be as interesting as, the people we had on the 10 episodes prior, right? I worry about that, but although I worry, every single episode I tend to put together has at least a good to great to awesome guest who has a good to great to awesome story to share. But then sometimes I meet an individual that has the most amazing, compelling, diverse story that you could possibly ask for as a humble podcast host. And this episode right here today is an example of one of those people. Okay. Let me tell you the guest name first. Okay. The guest name is Isa Martell. Isa Martell. He was a person who I met via the podcast. I believe he started out as a podcast listener, and I think we're friends on Facebook, and he was always very interactive, always very kind and complimentary of what we're doing here on the podcast. And one of the many times I put out feelers looking for new guests, he was one of the people to respond, saying he was interested in being on. All right. And he really undersold his story, right? Because I can't remember verbatim what he said to me in the message he sent explaining what his story was. But he did mention there was a little bit of paranormal attachment to the story, right? And that was enough for me. I'm like, okay, you've got some paranormal experiences, some things you want to talk about in that realm? Fuck yeah, I definitely want to talk to you. Come on in, let's do that. But as we sit down and we start talking, we record this episode, my mind is just blown by how complex and interesting and diverse his life has been, right? I'm not even going to tell you directly what we're going to be talking about here. I'm just going to read off a list of the topics that come up in the conversation. Okay. Now don't forget the guest name is Isa Martell. And the only thing I'll tell you about him is he is a Muslim convert. I believe he tells me in the episode that he started out as a Catholic, and then converted to being a Muslim. Okay. And, that comes up in the story, right? As you would probably assume that it would. Okay. But now here is the fucking mile-long list of things that come up in this episode. And, I'm just going to read it and let you guys just soak it all in. Okay. Acid trips, heroin use, a heroin overdose, murder charges, jail time, VooDoo, and get this, a literal puppet show in New York City on 9/11. All right, that's a lot. Right? There's a lot of good stuff there, right? Nope, there's more. Bat attacks, epileptic seizures, exorcisms, and if that is not enough, if all of those things I just read off to you were not enough to grab your attention and your interest and make you want to continue listening to this episode, also included in this episode, genies. Genies. Yes, genies, right? But not the cute Disney type of genies. No. Covered in this episode are the evil Djinn kind, right? If you've never heard of a Djinn versus a genie, what that is, the genie is the foo-foo Americanized Hollywood version of a Djinn. And a Djinn is in some belief systems, as you'll learn in this episode, it's a very evil creature. There has been some U.S. movies about that, but they're very dark, kind of like demons. Okay, but again, all of those things I read off to you in that list are included in this episode. It's all one person's life, and it's really just over all those topics fit in within about a 25-year window of this guest's life, and it's a fucking wild ride. So you're going to enjoy that. Real fast before we kick it off, don't forget the sponsor of the website, the sponsor of the podcast is simplewebsite.us. Simplewebsite.us. What do they do? Here's what they do. Say you want to build a website using the Squarespace website builder, and say you are like me and a fucking moron when it comes to doing technical stuff on computers. Okay, right? So if you are like me, you go to simplewebsite.us, you contact the good folks over there, and they will use their expert skills and talents using the Squarespace website builder to build the website of your dreams. Right? Definitely will. That's what they've done for me. Please visit filterfreeamerica.com, Filterfree America, America misspelled with the letter K.com, to check out the website they've built for me and get an idea of what they can do. But don't think that they're limited to just my version of the website, because I wanted something kind of simple and basic. They can give you all levels of website, and whatever you can dream up, whatever you can put together, that's at least able to do on the Squarespace website. They will be more than happy to do that. And also, please don't not go to them if you want just a little bit of help, because they'll be more than happy to help you with just one or two things on a website that you're already building, you've already built. You just want to dress it up a little bit more. They'll be more than happy to help you out there too. But even if you think you can build that website completely by yourself with zero help whatsoever, still go to simplewebsite.us. And this is why when you go there, you will find free tips and tricks that the good folks at simplewebsite.us have put up there for you just to take and use for free to add to your already apparent giant knowledge base of website building. And you don't need anybody's help, but whatever. Simplewebsite.us. Last thing, please take time to rate, and review the Filter Free America podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. If you're listening on iHeartRadio, if you're listening on Stitcher, or wherever the hell you're listening, make sure you've hit the subscribe button. If it has a rating or review function to it, please take time to maximize the rating. If it's 5 stars, give it 5 stars. And if you're able to leave a little bit of a review, even if it's something as simple as, hey, this podcast is better than driving nails into my head, so I'm going to continue to listen to it, whatever. Something like that, please leave it. And especially if you're on iTunes, please hit up the old iTunes there. I think we're at 30-something reviews right now. We'd love to hit a much higher number. So if you have access to iTunes, you listen via iTunes, please take time to go give the Filter Free America website 5 stars and a decent review. Anything else? I think that's it. Yeah, so let's kick this episode off. And there was so many topics in this episode, I didn't even know how to name it properly. So I just picked a few of the highlights, and that'll be the name. But again, that huge list of shit is already in there. Is all in there. So this episode is Murder Charges, Puppet Shows, and Genies with Isa Martell right here on Filter Free America. Let's go.
Fear one thing only in all that is. Fear the Djinn. Make your wishes.
All right. So, why don't you first, since our story kind of ranges essentially your last 25 years of your life, we're going to actually start in your 20s. What was going on early 20s in your life?
Well, in my early 20s, I lived in Pennsylvania, pretty much doing partying, going out, pretty much carefree lifestyle. Had a job around, I think it was 1994, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm.
I went to art school. I decided to take some art school classes in San Francisco, and I went out there for a bit and proceeded to do a lot of LSD in San Francisco.
Okay. Which is what you do in San Francisco.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of interesting because I didn't plan on doing all this acid, but we had gone out to buy some weed, and I had like $65 or $70 or something, and I figured I'd get like I guess it would have been like a quarter back then.
Mm-hmm.
And our apartment was in Berkeley, so I had gone out just walking down the street on Telegraph, and a guy approached me selling LSD, and
what a wonderful world.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is pretty awesome because he was like, "We just made LSD, and I'll sell you a vial of it." And I was like, "I only got like $70." He's like, "I'll sell you the whole thing." And so at that time, LSD was my drug of choice, and I was like, "Oh yeah, well, how can I decide? How can I go wrong with this?" So I gave him my money, and I was like, how do I know you're not just gonna diss me and run off with my money? And he was like, well, you can hold my dog while I just go get you the drugs. So I was like, all right. So
that would be a complicated scam. If
I know,
every time
yeah.
you want to scam somebody, you got to get
yeah,
a new dog.
You got a new dog. Yeah, it was a nice dog too. I forgot it was like a little boxer or something. But so he goes and comes back about 20 minutes later with like a food coloring container of just like purple liquid.
Right.
And I said, how do I know it's real? And he was like, well, I'll dose you and I'll hang out with you for like until you start tripping.
This was an awesome drug dealer.
Yeah,
he was
totally cool. Yeah, I was like, all right.
a dog lover too.
Yeah, I know.
So
I was
great.
like, all right. So, me and my housemate at the time out there, he was with me, and I was like, all right, well, I never had done liquid LSD, and so I was like, what do I do? He's like, well, hold out your hand, and he put in the palm of my hand. It looked like a puddle to me. It was probably like 4 drops. I mean, it was like a puddle,
right.
Probably like 4 drops of LSD, which compared to blotter paper, that was a lot.
Holy shit. Yeah, it was.
So, and I just swathed it back, and he hung out with us for maybe like a half hour, and I started just tripping, and he took it too.
Okay.
So he would know, and
you talking about the dealer or your
the
friend?
dealer, yeah.
Okay.
The dealer took it too, and my friend.
God, I hope he listens to this podcast and calls me.
And so he was like, well, obviously he probably started tripping, and it's like, yeah, and everything, the cars started going like,
did you guys get the dog a dose too?
No. All right,
so, you got to watch us, make sure everything's okay.
Yeah,
dog. It's on you.
So yeah, that was that. So that's where I was back in the around that time.
Okay.
We had that whole. There was probably in that vial a lot of acid. We tripped almost like every day. All my friends. I sold it until I got like $100, and then I was just like, screw it, who's ever with us, let's just do acid, and yeah, that went on for a while. It went on. We couldn't finish the vial, my housemate and I. It was just
Never been in a situation where I've had too much acid.
Yeah. So we actually like went out and decided to trade what was left. There was probably still like 20 hits left in the vial.
Holy shit.
And this was probably after like 150 like drops or something. It was a lot. And we went out on the street and we're like, can we just barter for like some weed just to get weed, you know, just to get rid of this and just be like, whatever. And I remember we found these kids and they only had like dime bags and they ended up giving us like 30 dime bags for like the, like the rest of this like acid, but it was all right, man. So I managed to live through it. So.
Right. Well, then from there you end up back in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So I decided that to move back to Pennsylvania because my I didn't have enough money to like pay my rent, so my family was helping me, and I kind of didn't really like that. So I decided to come back to Pennsylvania and then continue just doing whatever here, or not here, over there. Yeah. And that's when it goes into what we had talked about before then.
Right. So this is where you met. Did you already know this girl?
Yeah. We were friends for a couple of years prior to this. So.
And when you came back, was she? Because heroin comes into play.
Yeah. So when I came back, she had already done heroin and had been doing heroin and all sorts of drugs. She was an avid drug user. And so when I had come back, she introduced me to doing heroin. And
How are you guys doing it? Were you
snorting it?
Snorting, okay.
Yeah. So
it's funny whenever I hear somebody tell a story and they don't use needles. I'm like, well, at least they didn't shoot up.
I know. Yeah.
It's kind of like, that's not bad.
I know it is.
Not as bad.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember the first time, and this just kind of reflects on how crazy things were in the mid 90s, I guess.
Right.
We were at a coffee shop or a diner or something, and she had a bag of heroin. And if you don't know, users or listeners or you, they come in like little wax bags,
right?
Not implying that but
I've watched all the movies, so that's what I know as far as heroin goes. I was a crack dealer, so it's whole different.
But they come in little bags. So we were at this diner and she had a bag, and it was interesting because there were like two cops sitting at the table next to us. So she was like, well,
also doing heroin? That's awesome.
Yeah. So we had that would have been pretty wild.
Right.
She was like, I'm going to go, let's do this bag. And so I was kind of like trepidatious about it because obviously I'd never done this. And there were cops like sitting at the table next to us. So she was just like, I'll go in the bathroom and snort half and then I'll come back out.
Now that is ballsy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave these cops here in the dining room and go snort some heroin in the back. But I get it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, so I did it too then, so it was.
So you're just taking turns?
Yeah.
Like she does her, you come out?
And then she brought back, she like snorted half the bag and then brought it back and then like slid me the bag like, on the table, and then I went into the bathroom.
You guys are fucking ballsy. Well, now explain this to me then, because like, and sadly, I've had at least exposure to heroin use really recently with my current job. I work oftentimes really late at night, and I'm driving around the city doing what I do, and legal job, listeners. That's all I talk about on podcast, so I don't get fired. But in parts of the city, there's a really bad heroin issues right now. Sadly, it seems like the area that I'm in that I see a lot, it's affecting Native American community really bad.
Yeah.
And like I was just telling somebody the other day that I was driving through, and this is actually in the daytime. It was 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm driving down Bloomington. Is it Boulevard or Avenue?
Bloomington Ave.
Is it Bloomington Ave? Okay, maybe Ave. Or it's kind of South Minneapolis. And I'm currently, and that's a fairly busy street if you're not from around here. It's
Yeah.
not like a side street. It's a main thoroughfare. And I watched a lady shooting up right there in broad daylight, and I was just like, fuck, this is how real. But you go through there late at night when I'm working 2 or 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you drive down that road, you'd see them just passed out and different stages of high and everything like that.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
But I'm assuming most of that is needle use kind of reaction. Is there a different kind of reaction when you're using powder?
Well, I never used the needle, so I don't really know. But
okay, fair enough.
I would imagine that there's probably some different effect. I would imagine that it's probably more immediate. You know,
Did you ever have that kind of that heroin zombie reaction where because like there's just like you can go down there, like if we went down there right now, there would be somebody just fucking zacked out on.
Yeah, that's like
heroin.
the high of it. You know, if you I ended up only actually doing heroin 3 times, but
thank God.
Yeah.
And this does not mean that you can do it 3 times and not get addicted, because you can get addicted first time.
The point is don't do drugs. That's
exactly. Or if you're gonna do drugs, definitely don't do heroin.
Or LSD. I would, even though it was good, but I'll say don't do it. So that first time I didn't really have any. I didn't feel like that, and I think it was maybe because, the first time you do a drug, you might not get the reaction or don't know what the reaction is supposed to be.
Right.
But definitely the second and the third time I did, I actually threw up then too.
Right.
So it was like I had the complete typical or stereotypical movie heroin experience, I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The full deal.
Yeah, the full deal.
Right.
So
was of all times you did the 3 times you did it, was it always with her?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm assuming the last time was also the last time for her as well too.
Yeah, it was, unfortunately.
So where were you? Where were you guys at? Was this? No, this wasn't at the restaurant time, was it?
No, this was. So that day we had met up together in the afternoon, and I had purchased heroin that day. And
what was the going rate at that particular time in the 90s?
It was $20 a bag, or a little.
Is it a gram?
It might have been a gram. Okay. It must have been, yeah.
Okay.
$20.
God damn, that's fucking cheap for something so powerful.
How much is it now? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Probably still $20, but I can't see it. Maybe $40, maybe.
Right. Like when I was selling crack, like I was just selling rocks, and like a $20 rock would be like 1/10 or 12th of an eighth.
Yeah.
Something like that. So
yeah, I would say it's a gram. It didn't look like much in those little bags, so
gotcha.
I would imagine it was a gram. I watched the show on Netflix where they like follow drug dealers and stuff, and they're selling heroin a lot, and I think it is a gram.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So that day I had purchased the heroin, and I just went out on the street. I had known drug dealers then, and got it, and we snorted it in the afternoon and ended up hanging out. I believe we went to one of our friends' house in the evening, and she passed out. She passed out, which later was she had gone into a coma. Which nobody knew,
right?
Because we're like 21 years old at the time. So, what had happened then was, in the morning, I had left because I had to go someplace, and checked on her, but she was snoring. So I just assumed she had been sleeping. And then while I was at this event, I guess my friend whose house that this was at, he couldn't wake her, and then he proceeded to call paramedics, and then they couldn't revive her, and she was pronounced dead, I guess, at the hospital when they took her to the hospital.
Okay.
So that happened, and then when I got home, they had been trying to contact me while I was out, and finally I called my friend and he was like, yeah, so-and-so, she had died. You need to go over and the police are there and stuff like this. And I thought they were just bullshitting with me, because, it was be our friends to joke that another of our friend died. You know what I mean? So I didn't believe it. So I went over there, and then when I came around the corner and saw the cop cars, it was like,
you're like, holy shit, these guys are really committed to this, gag. There's they hired a cop and everything.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it was just a really like shocking moment, and I had at that point. I had given a statement. The cops were like, well, what happened? So I told them what happened. And ultimately, in doing that, I incriminated myself because I had told them that I had purchased heroin and given it to her. And I basically told them what we did. And we snorted it through, she had a $5 bill and we snorted it with that. And when they went through her stuff, she happened to have the $5 bill in her pocket. They tested it. It was 82% pure heroin. And basically they're saying that she overdosed on it, and that was that.
So what sucks here in this case, not only with her death, is there was was it a fairly new law?
Yeah, the law.
Because you actually were the first person prosecuted, right?
The law came into play about 6 months prior to this. Pennsylvania put into place a law which basically prosecuted someone who gives drugs to someone else and they die from them.
Right.
And it was basically targeted for drug dealers. That was their ultimate effect or target, I guess.
Making the risk of selling drugs even greater.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm from this small town of like 90,000 people in Pennsylvania, and the DA was like, oh, lovely, we get to
roll out this new law.
Yeah, and make an example of me with this.
So what is the actual charge? Because this kind of blew my mind when you told me what the actual charge was.
So the charge originally was third-degree homicide and possession of heroin. So both are really huge. Do you remember what the maximum sentence was on that original charge? No, I don't remember, but it would have been a state sentence.
Okay. Definite prison time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the girl or woman, I guess you should say, since we were adults, we both came from divorced families and stuff, and hers was, her dad happened to be one of the big drug dealers in the area.
What?
Yeah, so he just flipped out, and when as this started going on, and everyone knew who, not everyone like my age, but like my parents' age, which would have been her parents' age too. Right. They knew her dad as one of the big drug dealers.
Do you know what, was he a heroin dealer or was he another?
I don't know if he was a heroin dealer, but he was like the bad drug dealers, so he had basically said he was going to kill me, and so I was like, if I go upstate, they're gonna put the hit out on me, and they'll just shank me or something. So I didn't want to deal with that.
Holy shit.
So it was he actually got banned from we call it a pretrial there, but it's like an arraignment, because he was making death threats against me. So they didn't let him come in the room, to hear the evidence. And when they set bail and everything, he was actually to the police saying he was going to kill me. So they were like, you can't even go in there. And
they didn't fucking arrest him for that? Or is that, they're just like, oh, okay, we'll feel bad because your daughter, you got to.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably were like, holy he's emotionally distraught and stuff. So even though they knew who he was too, you know what I mean? So
or maybe he had a little power or pull somewhere.
Who knows? Yeah.
Holy fuck.
So that kind of sucked.
So you go through the court thing, and did you that they eventually lowered the charge, right?
Yeah. So, I got in Pennsylvania, it's a commonwealth, not a state. So we have the whole state is broke up into districts have magistrates in them.
Okay.
So when you get charged with something, you have to go in front of the magistrate, and they kind of decide if there's enough evidence to push it through to actually you being charged with something and going to trial or whatever. So I went to the magistrate, because I basically told them what happened, and even my lawyer said you told them everything to have a case against you,
Right.
So
Just a reminder. And
Yeah.
again, we're very empathetic about the death of the girl. Don't talk to the cops.
yeah, exactly.
Don't ever talk to the cops.
Well, that I will state that too. Don't ever speak to the cops. But in this case, it was so mind-boggling to me.
You were in a degree of shock, I assume.
Yeah, and also that I couldn't fathom that I would be responsible for this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I gave, I didn't force her down and shoot her up or anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or make her do drugs. It was here you go, and you can go off and do whatever you want.
Right.
And even my lawyer had made a point. He was like, yeah, 6 months ago, we could have smoked a joint together. But now if I give you a joint and you go out and smoke it and die for some reason, I'm responsible, So it just shows you, though, the extent of the war on drugs and all that BS that was going on in
Right.
the 90s and everything.
They threw out all the gray area and just,
Yeah.
tried to do the sledgehammer
Yeah, exactly.
solutions to everything.
Yeah. And so anyway, yeah.
So what did it, through the process
Yeah.
of the courts and all that, did you eventually have a plea deal?
Yeah, I took the plea. So
And
the
what did they plea it down to?
They dropped the possession charge and plead it down to involuntary manslaughter,
Okay.
which still is a sucky thing to have on your record.
Right.
Yeah. So I took the plea. We pleaded down. I was on bail for a year.
As the proceed was going,
Yeah,
it took a year
as-
for the
yeah.
case to proceed.
Yeah.
And hope, well, I actually already answered that question because I was going to ask you kind of what was the family's reaction to you. Was there any other reaction besides just the dad's reaction?
Yeah,
Or-
so the mom, who I was close with, her mom, after she died and during that year, her mom was like, yo, come over and tell me what happened. And I told her, and her mom, we broke down.
I'd been
and we're
terrified that was a
crying.
setup.
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to come over?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay.
Well, I would have, but like I said, I was close with her mom. I knew her mom. It wasn't just some.
Oh, and you said they're divorced too, so it wasn't like they were in
yeah,
the same house.
Yeah,
Gotcha, fair
and
enough.
her mom lived with another guy now at this point. So,
Okay.
And we were friends, hanging out almost every day. So
Right,
it's
right.
I knew her mom and everything. And her mom, at this point, knew what was up. And I believe that she believed everything I said and how it went down and what was going on. The struggle, I guess, for a lot of other people is that she happened to be on the dean's list in college. So, it was portrayed as she was portrayed in the media and everything as an A-list student and this type of thing, which is true. She
Right.
was, but at the same time, the flip side is that, we were going to
She was making the same
raves.
bad decisions
Yeah.
as you were making. And,
Yeah. And doing all sorts of partying and everything like that too. And everyone knew her. On the streets, in that scene, everyone knew who I was, who she was, who.
So there's a little kind of like a PR public perception type
Yeah.
debate going on, kind of painting you as the bad guy. And
Yeah. Totally
being
in
a
the
victim.
media, that's how it was anyway.
Gotcha. Especially in a small town, they have nothing else to do but farm reports
yeah.
and shit. So, I gotta see where that
so
came from.
that went on, that happened, and that went on for basically for the year. they kept postponing the actual, after I took the plea, then you go to sentencing, obviously. So
Right.
they kept postponing that up until I took the plea, though. It was weird because I remember saying, like, at the pretrial, well, I wasn't 100% that these drugs killed her. I thought maybe she also took like something else and that's what killed her, you know,
Right.
because I didn't die. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, and granted, you can say whatever, you know, like her body type or whatever, but we're pretty much the same size, you know. So I remember at one of the pre-trials going up to me before I took the plea saying, like, why don't you test, you know, to see if there was something else she took which would have caused this. And they were like, well, the tissue samples only we keep for 90 days and the 90 days coincidentally expired like last week or something, you know? So it was like all sorts of BS that, you know, I had gone through in the course of that year prior to me, like going, okay, I'll take the plea and we'll do the sentencing. It was like with the police, with the detectives, and all this was building my resentment to like
just the situation as a whole.
The situation and the seeing like the hypocrisy and like how the system they had basically already made up their mind. Like they didn't want to even hear anything I had to say or think it's possible that something that they said.
With your mic, pull just a little closer to your
sorry.
Front there. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, they didn't even like sound or appear that they wanted to hear anything I had to say or took into account any of my suggestions or anything, you know.
Basically, not that they didn't want to consider there was a shared responsibility.
Exactly, yeah.
Going on there. So going into this sentencing, I think I tracked this right from our pre-conversation.
Yeah.
What did you expect to plead to, and what was your expected punishment?
Yeah, so when I went in, we were supposed to have I took the plea
for the involuntary manslaughter.
For involuntary manslaughter. Going in, they didn't tell me exactly what the sentence would be, you know, but my lawyer insinuated that it would probably be like a 6-month probation type of thing.
Okay.
When I went into, and I said to him, I remember, this is interesting. I was so like, still at this point, mind boggled that we're even sitting at this, you know, I'm sitting with the lawyer at this, going into this. And I said, you know, what if we actually went to trial, you know? And he would be like, it'd be like rolling the dice. And he was like, the problem is if we go to trial, you'll go upstate if you get sentenced. And, you know, they would have picked the jury too. Probably would have been old white people, and, you know, they would have painted it to be however. And in my eyes,
and also by the letter of that law,
I was guilty.
It didn't matter regardless, because I mean, you technically provided it. You were the provider in this instance, not as a dealer, but as somebody who facilitated the use.
But that's in, you know, now here we are, you know, 25 years later or whatever, I can say that. But at the time, I didn't like really, I was still like, the law, couldn't the jury like see that this is like jacked up, that they're applying that law to this situation?
Right.
Because the law was clearly designed for drug dealers, and I wasn't a drug dealer, but they painted it as I was a drug dealer, you know. And even in like the newspaper articles and stuff at the time, they wrote that this is unprecedented, that this is even happening in this way. You know?
Okay.
So
that's interesting. That's good. There was somebody else acknowledging that. So let's take it now to the actual sentencing and the judge. And I forget what the technical term for that is when you're, because, you know, when I got arrested for drugs, I had to do the kind of same thing when I went on probation. was you basically admit to the
Yeah, I don't remember
There's a big fancy legal word for it.
I don't remember what it was either, but I always called it sentencing.
Right.
Yeah. And so this, so we had gone in there, and my lawyer was just like, all right, just show some remorse and try to like cry and, coach me. He was basically coaching because honestly, I was pretty, even as we're talking, I'm not really emotional about it, because I'm really like matter of fact, and I'm not saying that I'm not sad that she died and these events happened, but
you can be both. You can be frustrated with the situation, what it was, and still be empathetic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Care about your friend. I mean, she was your friend.
Yeah. So I had gone in, and her mom was there, but also her grandparents were there. And it was really her grandparents who seemed to push this concept that she was not a drug user, and it was me who turned her into some druggie and everything like this. So the judge asked them, what do you think? Give a statement. And when I remember this, because this was pretty much the final straw that I had, when they gave their statement, he was looking at them in the eye and very attention focused on them, and probably because he's a judge and had to show empathy that their granddaughter died and this and that, and they just like basically trashed me in their statement. And in retrospect, I just don't think they liked me. I mean, obviously I'm brown skinned, and they were white, and they were from that era of, not liking anyone but white people. So that might have played into the fact or not, but it seemed they never liked me, I guess. So, but then when he asked her mom, I think kind of saw that it was kind of bullshit too. And she was just like, I just want something fair, and that's really much all she said. But then he looked at me and was like, well, he might have said some other stuff, but then it came down to my statement. And when I went to talk, he didn't look at me, and he like took his pitcher of water and he like poured a glass of water and didn't even make like eye contact with me or anything. And at that moment in my brain, it just was like, F you. Right. If this whole thing was just BS. And part of my statement was, we were both consenting adults, and, I don't feel that I'm responsible for this, a person's death. So I'm going against what my lawyer had told me to do at this point.
Right now your lawyer's screaming in his head right now.
He like, I saw him. Yeah, he just looked down, and I knew he was just like, just shut up, dude, shut up. Right. But in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm getting asked about, it's my time to say something. And for this past year, I was just screwed over. And anything I say here is being documented right now. The court's writing it, and it's going to be written someplace. So this is it, And I said, like I said, I didn't think I was responsible for this. We were both adults, both consenting adults. And I said some other stuff, but I don't remember. But I do remember on the front of the judge, like the court of the county that this is in, the seal says mercy and justice. So that's in some random mind, like incredible moment of reading the room, like Kaiser Sose type of thing. I saw this, and I said to the judge, I hope there's mercy and justice in your heart, because one day you'll be judged too. And he was so pissed. He stood up and just left the bench. He was like, we were calling recess, and I remember my lawyer just looking at me and like, what the hell, dude? This is like, so
Your two big mistakes. Talk to the cops and didn't listen to your lawyer. Those are two bad ones.
you know, because this had basically never happened, you know.
Right.
So we're at this.
This is all new legal ground for the state.
And the
everything
judge just left the bench in the
Right.
middle of the sentencing, you know. So and the thing too, let me say this: we weren't supposed to have that judge, and that judge that I got was the most prick judge in the county.
Okay.
So at the last minute that morning, they changed the judges for him to come in.
Oh, fuck.
So that's why I was also like, this has just been a scam the whole freaking, you know, from day one. Everything's just been, you know, BS. So when he came back, he gave me 18 to 48 months, which was the maximum sentence that he
Jesus.
could give me. So,
Okay.
yeah, I went from 6 months probation with probably been no jail time,
Right.
you know, to 18 months minimum, 40, you know, so that's 4 years, you know, 18 to 48 months. Yeah.
Holy shit. So, but you did all that county time.
Yeah. So,
You didn't have to go to like a formal prison sentence.
No.
And how much time did you say you did altogether?
yeah, altogether it was, I think, like 24 months or 25 months. I did it all in the county because the minimum was still considered a county sentence. Like, I think, excuse me, I think misdemeanor wasn't a state charge. It was something weird like that. There's some weird thing where the sentence, I think that because the minimum sentence still falls under a county jurisdiction, then you can do the whole time
Under
in the
2
county.
years.
Yeah,
Anything over 2 years, they got to send
Exactly,
you
yeah.
to a prison institution.
yeah.
That makes sense. So while you're in there was two interesting stories that we wanted to talk about. And that pretty much wraps up the case. I mean, you did your time
Yeah.
and
So,
you got out,
yeah.
but your time in jail, you had two kind of interesting stories I just wanted to touch on. Number one, you did acid while you were in jail.
Yeah, so that was yeah.
How'd you get the acid in there?
Yeah,
and
so-
why the hell would you want to do acid while you're in jail? That would
Well,
terrify me.
It did terrify me too, but I was in that mindset of, you know what, I may never have this opportunity again. You know what
Fair
I mean?
enough.
So I hadn't done. That was actually the last time I ever did acid as well. But I remember we were in work release at this point, and during work release, obviously you can leave during the day, and someone else had brought in some blotter paper acid, and me and my cellmate in for work release, and another friend of ours, you know, did acid that night, and it was pretty wild. I eventually had to like kind of force myself to go to sleep because I was just like I it was funny. For me doing acid, I never had a bad trip, and at the time in San Francisco, we had so many people do acid that we kind of knew, even like shrooms or anything, we know how to handle that type of drug.
Gotcha.
So even people that might be having a bad trip, we were able to like get them out of having a bad trip. And
How many people at the time when you in jail were you doing acid with? Was
two people. There were two other people.
Okay.
And we only did it one. Like it was only like one time that someone ever brought it in. So yeah, we did it. I remember we were.
How did they bring it in?
I don't know. I guess in their wallet. I mean, it was, you know, blotter paper.
All
You
right.
just put like dollar bills.
Here, let me put a bad thought in your mind. When I was in jail, people like on work release, like you're doing, they would. There was one guy. He was a biker dude, and he was like, his job on work release was to go work on like county parks,
Yeah.
like mowing lawn and stuff like that. Well, he was a big drug head, meth and everything else, and his girlfriend would go to the park at night where he was going to be working at because they would know where they were going to be.
Yeah.
And like leave somewhere hidden drugs and things like that, including tobacco. Like 'cause
Yeah,
tobacco
yeah.
was like gold in jail because especially it was a non-smoking facility.
Yeah.
And he would go to the bathroom while he was on work release and like keister it.
Yeah,
is a technical
yeah.
term, and shove it up his
Yeah.
ass and carry it back in the jail, then pull it out when he got there, and then everybody would smoke I did. I'm glad I didn't smoke cigarettes
Yeah, that would have been pretty nasty.
but everybody
Yeah.
was smoking, asshole tobacco. For
Was
the most
it?
part.
Must have been like rollies or something because
Well, he brought it in as just a
a
bulk.
wad of tobacco.
Wad of tobacco.
And then they rolled them. Yeah.
Then they get it in there, and they, the Gideon Bibles they give you
Yeah.
in jail, they would tear pages of the
Yeah.
Bible and roll cigarettes on that thing. So maybe your acid came in somebody's ass.
Yeah, it might have been.
Which is a trip.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have sucked though if the bag tore
Right?
for
Oh,
him,
man.
the guy carrying it.
Or it would be the best high ever.
Yeah.
Who
I don't
knows?
know. Yeah.
So the other interesting story was you went in, you grew up Catholic as a kid.
Yeah.
You went in, we said questioning religion, more
Yeah.
agnostic than anything else.
Yeah.
But you left practicing Islam,
Yeah.
a Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what brought that transition through? And
So when I went into the jail,
right,
like you said, or like I said, I didn't have, I in a generic sense, identified as Christian, but I was not practicing religion in any way, and I was kind of agnostic. I never really went to atheist, but I went in there, and part of the whole prison process is I had to go to NA and all this. I had to see a shrink and all sorts of types of things. So I remember seeing a guy, he had a Quran, and I was attracted to like the calligraphy that was on the cover of it.
okay,
So I asked him about it, and he kind of just blew me off. So I was like, okay, whatever. And later on, I met someone else, obviously who was Muslim in there, and I asked him about Islam. And he had told me that, and now this was so we're in 97, or probably 96 or 97. He had told me that Moses and all the Old Testament prophets are in the Quran, including Jesus. And then after Jesus was another prophet, who is Prophet Muhammad, who the Quran was from. I had no idea about this. I mean, at this point in time,
first ever exposure.
yeah, zero exposure to Islam. I had thought the only thing I had possibly thought it would have been like Buddhism or some sort of Eastern philosophical religion.
Right.
So because he had basically said it's from the same God as the God in the Bible, and I believed in God, and I believed in the Bible in a generic sense that I did believe, and I still do, that the prophets were real, that these events happened. I was just not buying Christianity, and that's based on the fact that logically I couldn't accept that Jesus was both God and human, you know, and I didn't believe in the Trinity. And if you kind of look at the Bible, which I did when you're in jail also, again.
A lot of people convert to something.
Yeah.
in jail.
You know, you don't find Jesus talking that he's God, or the word Trinity isn't in the Bible. So it was like these weird things, you know, like I'm kind of conspiratorial, minded. So I'm like, wait,
You're in the right spot.
Yeah, I know. So I was like, like these things don't seem to add up. That you're telling me. So in any case, I had met this guy, and he had told me this stuff. So when he had told me that there is something else after the Bible from like the same God, then I was like, okay, well, I have to, since I believe in this God already, and you're telling me there's like a part 3 to the whole thing,
Right.
I have to check it out, you know. So
Star Wars was great. Empire was
I
great.
know.
Let's check out Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
check that one
There
out.
has to be an ending to it, It's like a trilogy, So I did, and that just like that first initial time, I just looked up the stuff about Jesus because
Okay.
that's what I was, most in my main conflicts with the Bible were with Jesus. So I looked up Jesus in the Quran and read the passages about him. And
Is he referred to as Jesus or whatever?
Jesus, actually, Isa is
Oh, that's
Arabic for
right.
Jesus.
Oh, that's right,
So,
Isa, okay.
Hence why I use Isa,
Gotcha,
because that was
gotcha.
like my gateway into it. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So when I had read this parts of the Quran, it was already what I had believed about Jesus, and it was like the Quran kind of negating like what the people say like about a Trinity and stuff like this, and affirming that Jesus wasn't God and he was just a human, and was the messenger and he's the Messiah. And that's kind of it is what I had believed myself from just reading the Bible and coming to my own conclusions. So for me, it was like a natural, okay, I already believe this, and now I'm reading something that's what I already believe. So it's pretty easy for me to accept it and go forward.
So tell me kind of briefly, was the conversion what you had to do, or who converted you?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, you really don't have to do anything. So yeah, you just have to accept Islam. So it's called.
I mean, is there like a baptism version? Or
No,
anything
there's no
like that?
baptism. It's called your shahada, which basically you just say, I believe that there's only one God, and I believe that Prophet Muhammad is his messenger.
Okay.
So by accepting this, I mean, you don't even have to say it out loud. Nobody's going to know if you're by yourself.
Okay.
No one's going to know any of this. But
So you don't have to have another person there,
No,
official of
no.
any kind. Okay.
They do. If you go to a mosque or something, they kind of make it official like that by having you do it in front of everyone. And
But there's not a required ceremony.
no, there's not.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
I actually kind of I have an issue with them doing that because they try to wait, till like Friday or something when there's a whole lot of people there. And I'm like, why don't you what if the dude dies before Friday and he had been wanting to be Muslim? You know what I mean?
Right.
So you're like, why don't you just like let him do it right now if he wants to become Muslim now,
Right.
and instead of making him wait a week or something?
Something like a nightclub where
I
you got to
know.
line up outside.
I know,
Wait till
so
it gets-
it's like whatever. But a lot of typically though, people do this, and in my situation in the jail, there were other people around, and one of the guys was like, "Okay, this is what you do, and this is what you say." And it was later that I learned that this isn't really necessary, and that's unfortunately in all religions, people make unnecessary stuff.
People like
stuff.
the ritual,
Yeah.
ritual stuff, the ritualization of things.
Yeah,
And
I like it too. I mean, I
Yeah.
get it.
Right.
That's kind of the thing that I like. Even I'm not Catholic now, but one thing that I still like about the church is like the pageantry and like the like everything's like.
I'm definitely not Catholic, but I really want one of those incense balls.
Yeah,
things
like
swing
they go
I really
around,
do.
and like
Right.
they got all these robes on and stuff,
Yeah.
Like I do like that, and like the pageantry and how it's all like formalized. But
is what it-
I can't get into it anymore.
Okay. Well, it's important that we talked about you becoming Muslim, because that's going to basically carry over through the rest of what we're going to talk about here. But one story I wanted to get, because what we're going to get into next is really your relationship with your grandmother, and how your grandmother was a practitioner, believer in Santeria,
Yeah.
or we're saying voodoo is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But one of the stories about that kind of carries back to your time going through the court process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So does your mother or grandmother, did she give herself a title within Santeria? Is she a priestess, or I don't know how
never
it works.
to me. I like I often think like maybe she is like some sort of head, priestess, and perhaps she has had wanted me to join her, or like you said, mentioned, maybe like pass the torch type of thing.
Right.
But in this situation, that what happened, when I was at my bail hearing, it was set for 3 p.m. on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And the bail bonds.
And just in case, I don't want anybody listener to get stumble. We're traveling back in the story a little bit here. This is back when he was going to, after he'd been charged, going to court, getting ready to try to bond out on his charge of essentially what would we say, attempted murder was the original?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, third degree
attempted murder.
So at this bail hearing, the one where like her dad was like said he was going to kill me and stuff like this, my grandmother was there, and the magistrate had grown up with my dad and my uncles on the same block that my grandmother and they all lived. So they all knew each other. And everyone liked going to her because she was, when you got her like picked, she had the reputation of being lenient toward the minorities because her district was like
that community.
That community, the south side of the city, which was that community.
Gotcha.
And since she knew everyone, like basically she knew everyone in the community already,
right.
So when my bail was supposed to be $50,000, 10%, which would have been $5,000 that we needed to have. So we had brought $5,000. But during the bail hearing or whatever, she decided to change it to be $100,000, 10%, which would have been $10,000. And
did she give any indication as to why? Did she make a statement or anything that?
No, I think it was just given the case, you know what I mean? Like it was just like, okay, well, I think it was probably
maybe again because of the newness of the charge.
The newness, and probably because I was like, this is bullshit, you know what I mean? And she was like, if by her doing that, the hearing or whatever it was called ended at 4, the bail bondsman closed at 4:30, it's Friday, that forces you to go to jail. And since it's Friday, I had to stay in jail until Monday. And then because you're only there till Monday, you don't ever get out of intake, right. You're like stuck in them crappy intake cells for like the weekend. But I think she did that knowing all that.
Okay.
Like, okay, well, I'll just
maybe at the least she just maybe wanted just to sit down for a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I think she did. She was like, you know what, this is like a serious thing, and maybe she was like, this, you need to like, who knows? But to me, it was still BS. Anyway, even now, I even if I was acting like an arrogant punk, which I probably was,
we all were at that age.
I still don't think that gives the people in that position to, do these types of things, like play their
beyond
their
the scope
power.
of what they should have done. Yeah.
So anyway, my grandmother then, knowing her,
was she was there at the
she was
hearing?
there. Yeah.
Okay.
Knowing she knew her whole life, saw her outside in the hall, and the magistrate was pregnant at the time, and my grandmother confronted her and basically had an argument with her, and then said that she's not fit. I'm like, she doesn't deserve to have this child.
Whoa.
And then the magistrate had a miscarriage after that.
Not like on the spot.
No, not on the
fucking
spot.
Terrifying.
Yeah, not on the spot. I don't know how far away, but
right.
The crazy thing about this is that they didn't tell me, like my mom and stuff, they didn't tell me that until like way later.
Right.
You
weren't even aware. Okay.
No. So it wasn't until like a while after the fact that they, because I had to go in handcuffs and like,
Oh yeah, because you're going to jail.
Yeah, I was going to jail, so I didn't see that or anything happen.
Holy fuck.
They just told me about it afterwards, and my grandmother had never to this day. has
And
never
at
told me
that
about
point, you weren't even aware of her practice or her beliefs.
No,
at this time?
no, no, not to any like degree like this, you know.
Okay.
And you know, I can I believe that she did something, which, you know, whether you believe in voodoo or not, or spirituality or whatever you want to call it, I have a firm belief that my grandmother did something.
Okay. Well, let's
Whether or
explain
not-
why. Because
Yeah.
when you were out on bail,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it was
Am I
good.
right at the
Yeah,
time?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You were
Yeah.
staying with her
yeah.
as you were going through court for this year-long legal process.
Yeah.
So what was your new look into your grandmother's life at this? I guess you had said you'd picked up a few things, you'd seen things in the house prior, but now, and actually, I guess give an example then. As growing up
Yeah,
as kids in
so-
and out of her house, what were you seeing in her house? And you're starting to learn what she is. Or
Yeah,
what she's
yeah,
practicing.
yeah. Some interesting things is that my grandmother has this collection of dolls that she had ever since I was little, and they're like Barbie dolls. So it's weird. When I was little, like, you know, teenager little, I guess, and maybe even younger, I never thought about it, you know, but then I was like, well, why does my grandmother have this collection of Barbie dolls, you know?
And when you say Barbie doll, you're talking about just like they went
Like-
to the store and bought one out of the pack and
Yeah.
it's just like a Barbie display, or is there anything altered or different about the Barbie doll?
I mean, I never saw anything altered or different, you
Okay.
know, but she has them, like a lot of them, like
Okay.
in the boxes still, like up
Okay.
on the shelf in her bedroom. That's the thing. They're like in her bedroom.
Okay.
She has statues like of Mary, candles, and she has like a Ouija board, all this like little shrine, you know, type
Okay.
of thing in her bedroom. And she always was, when we were little, adamant that we couldn't go in her bedroom. So it was like a lot of weird things, you know, and as a child, you don't ever think like, okay, well, that's her bedroom. You know what I mean?
All right.
I mean, I guess I tell my kids not to go in my bedroom, you know, but in hindsight, though, now, what she then had told me, which I'll say now, you know, it kind of all fits this thing. When I was on bail, I had stayed with her that year, and there were times where I would be sick or something, and she would make soup and ask if it like made me feel better and stuff. And the odd thing is that it did, you know,
Right.
and it would have been just like chicken noodle soup, you know, that
Right.
tasted, you know what I mean?
Nothing out of the ordinary. There was like
Nothing
an
out of the
eyeballs
ordinary.
floating around.
Yeah,
there. Nothing like that.
but it did like make me feel like, you know, it made me feel better and like made me not be sick, you know. There are some other things like I had, I remember during that time period, I had gone to, I was really into like new age type of stuff, and I had gone to like a psychic and stuff like this, and my grandmother always
And a reminder for listeners, again, this is pre going to prison or going to jail and getting converted to being a Muslim.
Yeah, this is like before that, yeah. So my grandmother would always ask me about this, you know, like going like this type of stuff, like, and she would ask me about this psychic I would go to, and if I ever mentioned my grandmother to her, which I did because there were these weird things, and my grandmother had asked me if she thought I was a witch, and when I would be like, well, you kind of are like this, she would just be like, haha, you know, like
Not
kinda, like,
denying it, but
yeah,
not-
you know,
yeah.
like, you know, like that, like, so all these like things happened, and they kind of just like kind of kept playing into me and thinking like maybe she does something, I don't know.
Right.
But eventually one day she did come. This was now, I had gone to prison, and when I got out, I did like maybe about 24 months, I think I said, in jail, and then I got out and I had 2 years of state parole. But during that 2 years, I went and stayed with her too during this time. So we got closer and closer. Eventually, She saw me starting to practice Islam more. I had grown a beard at this time. I was clean shaven and everything before that, and kind of I had geared toward praying all the time and this type of stuff. But eventually she called me one day and asked if I can come over and help her move her couch or something, which was odd. Even at the time, I was like, why do you want me to help you move? It's like 2 in the afternoon, you know. And she was like overtly nice, you know, like normally she's like, grandson, you know, but this time she was nice to the point where I thought it was weird, you know, but I was like, okay, I'll come over and help. So I came over to her house and like helped her move her couch or something, but it was just basically like a setup because what she really had me there for was to tell me.
I mean, it was like a weird spell.
Yeah.
It's like the move the couch spell.
Yeah. She had called me there to tell me that she thought I had this like black cloud of some sort over me, and she could help by doing this magic or voodoo or Santeria. She didn't call it any of that.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
What did she refer to it as?
She didn't refer to that. She just said, I can help you by, I think she said like use some magic or something, but she was like, you have to get like these components. One was a bunch of gallons of holy water. I don't remember what the other ones were. This was like over 20 years ago now, but I remember thinking.
Was there anything like holy water seems kind of like expected, but was there anything that you do remember that was maybe more bizarre, like Eye of Newt or anything?
No, I think like feathers or something weird like that too. Like the other things were like weird that I would be like, where am I going to get this stuff? But even the holy water, I was like, how am I going to get like 3 gallons of holy water? Like where do you get that from? You know, like
just bless this case of Nestle's water
you
for
know,
me,
like
preacher.
So I don't even think they had bottled water back then.
Oh yeah,
so I would have been with the gallons, you know, like the milk jugs.
It's like a baby pool full of it.
That's what in my head I thought, like, do I have to go to the fountain at the church and like fill them up? You know?
Right.
But anyway.
He's reminded me of my favorite scene from Lost Boys when they're getting ready to go fight the vampires. And
And
the guys, they run into the church and they're all filling up their squirt guns.
That's what in my head, that's what I thought I would have to do.
Right.
So, but the thing, I think she needed the water and stuff because she explained that we would go in the bathtub and she would do this and pour the water over my head. And then it would, you know, do this spell and I'd be free of whatever. But the weird thing was that she had said that for it to work, you have to believe it. Right. And that's kind of like when you think about magic, that's kind of the essence of it. You know, like if you don't believe it, it's not going to work.
It's a barrier for it to work is the belief system.
And that's why I said before, too, if you ever saw the movie Skeleton Key, the whole movie's the setup, and at the end, the girl finally believes it, and it triggers the whole movie. You know, the whole movie was the setup, and at the end, when she believes it, is the whole thing goes down,
right? And
the spell works. But so that's a spoiler, but the movie's pretty old. So
right now, as a little aside, when we were talking pre-recording here, just kind of getting the outline put together, I suggested, because you said she didn't really approve or didn't like the idea of you practicing Islam. Is that?
Yeah, I still don't think she does. She's still alive today and we still talk and stuff, but yeah, I definitely don't think she approves it.
Okay. And I suggested that maybe when the darkness she saw in you was her way of saying she doesn't want you to be a practicing Muslim.
No, that's true. I didn't, like I said, I didn't think about that, but that could be 100% true. And you know, the thing too about that, she was like, you have to believe it and you can't tell anyone. And you know, immediately I went and told like, my sister and stuff. But no one believed me. That was the insane thing. And I know that at this point like back then when this incident happened, which was probably like 23 years ago or something, she didn't tell, nobody else knew this, you know. And like I said, I'm the first grandchild. My dad is her oldest son. so I'm the next oldest. And at the time I had thought, and even I think we talked about it too, that maybe she was trying to pass this knowledge on to, someone else. And I'll tell you, if I wasn't Muslim, I would have been all on it.
Right.
I would have been like,
that's the only thing that really prevented you. So
that's it.
I don't know if we said it before. So you didn't do the cleansing spell.
We didn't do it. Yeah.
Right.
But if I wasn't Muslim, I would have been like,
keep putting her off. Like, I just can't find these feathers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I don't remember. I told her, I'll think about it. But I think she noticed I was like a little bit weirded out because she confessed something to me that was like really personal,
Right.
And I was like, and then like we said, I think the whole time, and perhaps maybe my whole life, at least, who knows to how back it can go, I think she was testing to see if me or anyone would be open to accepting this. And since I was the only one who practiced religion and openly talked and searched for like spirituality,
so it made the most sense to her that you would be the one that would be the most open to the idea.
Exactly.
At the time.
That's what I think happened.
Okay. Well, the story. It's weird because we're just jumping from topic to topic here, but it's all kind of interconnected. This is an interesting story a life that you've led, and of course, being that you're on my podcast, I have to find a way to work in 9/11 in here, and you have a very close connection to the events of 9/11, up into the fact that you were in New York when this happened.
Yeah.
So we know where we're at on the timeline on this. I don't need to ask you what had happened. So let's first talk, again, practicing Muslim in New York, day of 9/11.
Yeah.
Can you tell me your 9/11 story?
Yeah.
Where were you at? What you were doing? What did you see?
So at this time now, I had been working as a puppeteer for a puppeteer company. We did like puppets like Muppets.
Okay.
And we did them at elementary schools and small schools. So we were in.
Was this connected to being a Muslim? Like, was it a Muslim teaching thing, or just
no,
happened to be the gig that you had?
Yeah, it was just the job that I had.
Gotcha.
So we often we had basically the whole school year we traveled, and on 9/11 we happened to be in New York, just north of Manhattan, and I remember waking up, and we did it in teams. The guy I worked with at the time was taking a shower, so I put on the news every morning, and I put on the news, and obviously the World Trade Center's on fire.
Jesus.
I watched the second plane hit the World Trade Center. Live, yeah. And the thing about
were you anywhere geographically where you could like run outside and look outside and have a line of sight?
No, we didn't have line of sight to it. But the thing I remember,
even thinking about the idea of that, it's just
the thing I remember about it is that my brain, has stuck to me to this day. My brain couldn't rationalize that the plane. So the view that you saw, it's that view right there.
He's pointing to the. I have on my wall the Star Tribune newspaper from the day of 9/11. If anybody's never seen the pictures on the website,
but it's from the other angle where you can see the other tower. Like,
okay,
you know what I mean.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
So my brain couldn't fathom that if you watch it, I thought the plane flew behind the tower. You know what I mean, from that vantage point,
right?
And I remember, like, I was thinking, well, where did the plane go?
Right.
Like, you saw the building, it blow up,
right?
But I was expecting the plane to, like, I couldn't fathom that the plane smashed into the building,
Right.
And I remember when my partner came out of the bathroom, I was like, yo, like, holy shit, this, something's going crazy. And he was like, what happened? And I was like, well, it looked like the plane hit the building,
Right.
And obviously it did. But
right.
So I remember we called like our boss.
So people who like, especially whenever we talk about stuff like this, and I always like the people who are either too young to remember the day of, or who weren't even born yet. That it's easy now when you go back and look at the videos, it's easier to understand, but to live it that day, I talked about it on the episode I just did.
Yeah.
It was like you said, it's really unsettling. Your brain can't grasp it,
yeah,
for the most part. I mean, there's to different degrees for different people, but it was such an amazing in the worst possible way thing that happened that your brain just its ability to process reality.
It couldn't, and we watched it live, which was crazy.
I saw it in rerun. Like I saw the buildings fall live. I never saw the
but it was
live.
crazy, like because you're like, holy shit,
right?
And because you have to remember, you're watching the TV screen, so that plane entered the screen, and like you only had like that half second to
register
process
what was going
plane,
on.
You know what I mean? Like came into the screen and then hit it.
Right.
So I remember calling.
I've literally got goosebumps, man. Just the idea of that, and I'm just oh god.
I remember calling my boss. So our company, my boss was in Pittsburgh, and I live.
Was his reaction? The shows must go on.
Yeah, that's what he was. I was like, "Yo, dude, we're in New York. Planes are smashing stuff. Like, what should we do?" And I guess he probably didn't even know what was going on yet.
Right.
And he was like, "Just go to the school," So we're like, all right. So we went to the school, which was just on the Jersey side, of Manhattan. And I was like, yo, Regan, do you want us to still do this show? And it was for like first graders and kindergarteners. And the principal was like, look, just set it up and we're going to act like nothing's going on. You know what I mean? But they were like,
holy fuck.
We'll wheel you a TV, because we had this big stage that was like 8 feet tall that we stood behind, and we were in the gym and they had a TV in there. So
they kind of defaulted to what's not freak up the kids.
That was their thing.
So
yeah.
That was
they were like, we're not going to.
Because nobody really knows what to do. This
exactly.
is unprecedented.
No one knew what to do.
You don't know
so they were like, just do it. And we had
Jesus.
the TV behind the stage with us while we were setting up. And we saw, like, we were watching it, and
this has got to kill your vibe for the show.
Oh,
you're
yeah,
put
it
on,
did,
unless you're doing a really tragic puppeteer play.
And I'm like, I don't even want to be there. That was the thing. Like, I'm like, we should probably go.
Right.
Like in my head, I'm like, dude, like we need to get out of here because I don't freaking play. You know what I mean? Like you didn't know what's going on. And parents started coming in and pulling their kids out. And I remember a guy coming in and being like, the first tower just fell, And he was like, and then like another guy came in and was like, the second tower fell. And we had it on the screen, so we knew, but.
And all the time you're doing a fucking puppet show.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So when the puppet show was done now, by this point, it was like now, like noon or 1 o'clock or whatever. And we had to drive back my friend, he lived in Philly and I lived just north of Philly. So we had to go. If you don't know the Northeast, there's one main highway that goes through New York, down the shoreline to Philly. So that was closed, and we had to go around Manhattan, and you just saw like the smoke. There's like lines of traffic and just like so many ambulance, like the highway was shut down in that direction to go to New York, so you can either enter
you're
New
literally
York
circling the epicenter of this event, surrounded by millions of people who are just in this weird state of shock and disbelief and confusion. And
so we're just on this highway with a line of cars, and it took like probably like what would have been like normally. So from New York to Philly, it probably takes to drive maybe like an hour and a half. It's on a highway, it's not very far. But this probably took like 6 hours or something to get around Manhattan down there. And it was just line of cars. The opposite direction, the highway was closed. And it's just like every like couple minutes, some sort of police or fire truck or something would be heading there. So it was really weird. And it's like all quiet, like there's no planes now. They shut everything down.
Yeah, everything shuts
down. So
down.
like the whole thing, and you were listening to the radio and everything, you're just being pummeled by every single station, all this is going on.
Right.
So it was pretty wild event, that day.
As an aside, and again, it's so hard to even think about anything like this, and it would have been just by happenstance. because you don't have anything to compare to. I'm about to ask you, does anything seem unusual about that day? That was besides, because I'm asking you, I'm trying to say, is there anything that didn't seem like should have been happening? But how the fuck would your brain even
you wouldn't
be cognizant of anything like that?
At least then, at that moment, no.
Right.
Because, I mean, I have a friend who actually was on Wall Street when it all happened, and she had to run, like, from, when they came down in the clouds. She ran and was like,
she's one of the people just fleeing on foot,
and she got PTSD from it and everything. But even like for those people and stuff, you can't. For me, I was far away, and I just believe, I didn't have anything to compare to, even though I watched it happen live. Mm-hmm. Like I said, my brain couldn't fathom it, but there's the picture right there. Obviously, a plane smashed into it.
Right. I would have to think that a comparison about the brain process would be like pre-film. Days in history, and you were to like go back in time and take them a DVD copy of a fucking of Avengers movie and make them watch it, and then like somebody from the 1800s like trying to make sense of this image,
or even like a cell phone, like one of these
anything
phones now,
like that.
like hey,
just trying to understand what that is.
It was like my brain couldn't process it until after the fact, and and at that time too, we're all wondering like what happened, like what. These planes hit, like
just the act itself is mind blowing, but then even to start to dig into the idea of who, what, where, when, and how.
My only that day though, I do remember. I guess what we were talking about, the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. I do remember them hearing on the radio on that drive that they had launched fighters.
To intercept
to intercept the plane or whatever. I guess I had mentioned this, maybe it was on like on the Filter Free site when we were on the Facebook page, and someone was like those fighters went up but they weren't like armed, like or something. I don't know, but now that we're in later on, and it maybe shortly after the events, I don't remember if it was maybe like once we were able to sit back and watch what was happening. I don't buy the official story now. I kind of thought that obviously the 7th building was detonated. How would they have rigged it? Obviously it wasn't rigged that morning, so it must have been pre-done.
I'm the same way. There's lots of questions I don't have the firm answers to, but I'm just the official stories.
Yeah.
I mean, there's too much evidence.
Yeah.
Points the other way now.
That's how I am too.
That's a wild take there. So to move from that and pursue down this amazing life that you had, again, to remind listeners, practicing Muslim, now you're living in post 9/11 as a practicing Muslim. And this is kind of was the next catalyst to the next stage of your life here. So you ended up taking a leave of the United States, going to Saudi Arabia, was your first stop. Talk about what was that decision process? Why did you do that? And what was going on there?
Yeah. So, that process started in the process of me gearing up to become an expat, I guess, happened in 2005. But so we have from 9/11, which was the end of 2001 until this point, it was interesting to watch how people that I had known, my whole life, or, at least since I was a teenager, and like people that were older than me that I knew, kind of take this very nationalistic, like, and basically we call it now Islamophobia, but at that time I don't think that word was invented yet. Like stance and talking like we hear them talk like badly about Muslims, but like I was Muslim, you know what I mean? Like with them, and like the feeling and seeing just how I was being treated differently now. I remember at one of the shows we did, because I still worked as a puppeteer for a while. Like someone actually called like the cops on us because we had to do more shows, like in around there in New Jersey and stuff. You know, and the cops came while we were loading something into one of the schools, you know, and it was just weird.
based on your appearance.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Long beard, very traditional.
Exactly.
Okay.
Even though I was dressed like this, I mean, I don't dress, you know, I don't.
And for the listener, he's dressed in a he's not in like a I don't, what is that called?
The thobe.
The thobe is
yeah,
what it is? Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, it was just a buildup of this type of stuff, and seeing just people that I know, but the country in general, like switch to this, we need to go kill everyone, you know, type of mentality. That
I was one of those people at the time when it, you know, up until my, you know, change of view, I was one of those people like, let's go kill these fucking terrorists. That's what we have to do. Yeah.
And I mean, it's, you know, it's weird now that we even think about that, because if you think, you know, so I was like 20 something when 9/11 happened. Technically, my dad could have been in the military still.
Right.
My dad isn't in the military and wasn't, but let's just say pretend he was.
Right.
I could have, and he could have been fighting there.
Right.
At 9/11, or he could have, during when 9/11 happened, he could have been went and got deployed there.
Right.
I could have joined the military and got deployed there. So now father and son. And if I had a kid, like back then, like say I'm going to go get deployed, let's have sex and pop out a kid.
Right.
Now, my kid we are 19 years later, my kid could sign up and join the military and go fight there. You know, so it's like crazy to think that like technically three generations of people
that has happened.
Go, can be fighting on the same. You can probably like talk about, I was at that hill. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's crazy.
It's the family business for some families at this point now.
It's wild that how much that event had like changed just everything. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
did you have any like either interactions directly with somebody who was a close friend or family member change their behavior to you directly, or and say it outright like, no, I'm not fucking with you now because you're a Muslim? Or did you have any like out in public, outside of somebody calling the cops that time, of you being chastised directly? Or
not directly, but that subtle like
a vibe.
Yeah, the vibe and the slow, we're gonna like shut him out type of thing. You know what I mean? Like slowly be like, okay. You know, because really like these people, which I don't care. All right, I don't care if you don't like me. All right, fine. But at least have some balls to say, you know what, dude, you might be one of them people. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And now in hindsight, those people, this is the screwed up thing, is like those people like won't admit that they did that. Right. You know what I mean? And the one time I called it out, like on social media, and like they had the audacity to be like, oh, well, it was like, you know, the times were different at that point and it was, you know, justified. And I'm like,
because there's a window of time where even the most non-racist person was like, you know, blood in the streets, calling for it and everything else. And like, we could, anything they wanted to do with the military. Fuck yeah, let's do that. Yeah. It was like,
but I'm like, come on, at least just be like, yo, you know what, I was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, at least say, especially because you knew me. That was the thing. It was like, I can see if you had just met me during that time period, but the fact that you knew me since before I was Muslim too. Right. You know, and it's not like I converted to Islam on September 12th and was like, you know,
that would have been a really hard day to convert.
I know.
September 12th.
You know
like, we had to schedule let's put this one off a week or two.
You know, but you know what I mean? So I was just like, man, this, you know, and ultimately it led up to, you know, the resentment I had with so much stuff, you know, with living in the U.S. and especially over there, you know, not or meaning we're in Minnesota now, but I'm from
The East Coast.
the East Coast. Yeah. So in around 2005, I was unemployed and, a guy, professor of economics, I think he was, had come to the States, to our town. And
Watch your mic a little bit there. There you go.
He was doing some research in the library. There's a big college there, and he was doing some research and needed an assistant. So he knew I had seen him at the Muslim Student Association mosque, which was the closest to my house. So I would hang out there on the college university campus. So he knew I had met him. He knew I was unemployed, and he asked if I wanted to help him out and be like his assistant, and he'd give me a couple bucks or whatever. So I was like, yeah, sure. After that time period, it was probably like 6 months or something he was here. He was going to go back to Saudi Arabia. He said to me, did you ever think about coming to Saudi Arabia or traveling? And I was like, no, I never really thought about that. But I didn't have anything here really going. And he was like, why don't you give me like your passport information and a whole bunch of information. And when I get back, I'll try to see if I can hook something up. So I was like, all right, what do I have to lose? I gave him this info, and there were 3 other people that he took the information from too. And, about 4 months later, get a call or whatever. Oh, we got you guys visas. You can come over and teach for the summer over here in Riyadh. So I was like, all right, let's go. I did that. This was in 2006 then. I went over there. I taught at the Saudi British Center, which was pretty cool.
Do you remember this? Just kind of another aside here. Do you remember if there was anything that additional hurdles or weirdness, especially being a Muslim, about traveling there?
Well,
did they make it a harder process for you, or any specific questions?
Leaving wasn't the problem. Coming back 3 years later was Minneapolis. At this point. So when I was out of the country for 3 years, but during that time,
I guess at that time, being Muslim, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I know. Sure. Yeah.
We'll pay for your flight.
Yeah. And when I was out from, so I spent those 3 months in Saudi Arabia, but then I eventually moved to Marrakesh in Morocco, and from there, flying into Europe is only 99 euros. So I hit Spain, Belgium, France, Germany,
nice,
England. I was like, shoot, might as well
take
travel
advantage
to all these places. So my passport was just filled with completely filled with stamps. All these stamps, and
or as TSA calls it, red lights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, So when I came back, they did stop me, and they stopped me in Minneapolis. I had been gone 3 years, and they were like, did you travel to Syria and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whatever the axis of terror was back then. So
the hit list.
Syria, Iran, and Iraq, And I'm like, no, you got my passport, whatever. Also, then they were like, well, we're going to check. You got to go in that line over there and check your luggage. And they did. And, it was weird, though, that I will never forget this. The guy checking my luggage asked if I had sexual toys and stuff in my bag. And I'm like,
you want to borrow them?
I know. I was like, do you get that often? Or why are you asking me this? Right. And he was like, well, you never know what people have. And I'm just like,
what is that?
I was just like, I was just weird. I'm like, man, are you kind of some pervert or something?
Right.
I don't know. So that, gum. And when I was in,
no, you don't. Would you like some to take with you, sir? Oh, okay.
When that happened, and no other country had any issue except England. And when I went to London, they stopped me getting off the plane, and the guy like questioned me probably for like 45 minutes or an hour.
No shot.
And then on top of that,
Oh, you were the random
yeah, exactly.
check guy. Okay.
Coming from Morocco, they're like, well, you got an American passport and you're coming from Morocco by yourself. They're like, that's odd. I'm like, I'm a tourist. I
Right.
want to come. I was like, I'm American. I mean, maybe you're still salty that we whipped your ass,
Right.
So, what I mean? But and then like on top of that, when I went to watch the changing of the guard, I like left, and the big brother like stopped me. They
Just
were
randomly on the street?
yeah, and like they were like they sworn me, and they were like, I had
Now these guys aren't the guys in the red coats and the big furry hats.
no,
That'd be
they're the
fucking weird.
undercover guys, and they're like, well, we were watching you watch the changing of the guard, and I had my headphones on, and they're like, it looked like you were talking on your phone. I'm like, well, that's what my phone is for. And I didn't. I mean, and they're like,
Right.
where are you staying and blah, blah. And I'm like, what the heck,
Oh
So,
my god, that's weird.
and I had friends I still have them in England. And they were like, yeah, they do that to everyone. But I'm like, yeah, well, it's kind of suspicious that the guy at the airport stopped me and then you stopped me,
Right.
So maybe they thought I was going to blow up like the guard or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that was, I
Holy
guess
shit.
the questioning. But they do, like, and a lot of my friends that traveled, leaving the country is never a problem. It's always coming back.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So real quick, I want to touch on a few things before we get kind of to the end part here. What was your kind of take on Saudi Arabia, just in general at that time? What was life? You were there how long?
I was there basically for the summer. I did like the summer program. Yeah, so it was I had a 90-day visa, so I was there 90 days. This was into the summer of 2006, so I actually really enjoyed it. I know, like my wife probably, she would object and hate that, but
Right.
I was single at the time, male. I have, no dependents or anything. So, they pay for your housing, and then you get paid on top of that. So it was easy for me to bank a bunch of money. I got to go to Mecca. So, it was pretty nice. The bureaucracy part of it kind of sucks, which is ultimately why I left. But, I'll just say that, just to put a disclaimer, as much as I think that government is like jacked up, it's not like the portrayal that we have of it here.
Right.
And women are oppressed and everything there, but you still see women out on the streets and this type of thing. It's not like the concept that they can't leave their house or anything like that. That's complete bull,
Right.
So, but otherwise I didn't have anything bad or anything like super good,
Right.
It was a nice experience to travel and stuff.
Your next stop, believe it was your next stop, was Morocco.
Yeah.
And how, kind of the same question.
Yeah. So I went to Morocco because when my visa was up in Saudi Arabia, I didn't want to stay there because of these, just like the restrictions on travel and stuff. So I had talked to my friends that I worked with who were all from other countries like Jordan and Egypt and stuff about going to one of these countries, and they were willing to help, but the problem is that your American passport, for those of you who have never traveled, we don't need to get visas to go to a country. When you go there, they just stamp your passport at the airport and you have a visa. Whereas other countries coming here, they have to apply for a visa before they get to America. Right. But if I went to Egypt or Jordan, or Lebanon, you only get 90-day visa, or you get 30-day visas. And I didn't think that I can really find a job or at least get situated for...
By the time you get the ball rolling, 30 days is up.
Yeah. But Morocco, I know, gave a 90-day visa, and I had been to Morocco on vacation in 2001. So I kind of was familiar with it, and I knew I liked it there, so I went from Saudi Arabia to Morocco. When I got to Morocco, I had got that 90-day visa, I ended up tutoring English, meeting some people that needed an English tutor. I tutored them. And then I also eventually got a job for a company called, I won't mention the name of the company, but
better idea on this show.
But I was a backpacking guide, basically. Okay. So I hiked, backpacked.
So other tourists coming from other parts of the country would come to Morocco, and you would just...
Yeah, other parts of the world, actually.
Other parts of the world, and they would be English-speaking, and you'd be the tour guide.
So it was pretty cool. It was a nice gig, too. They paid in euros, like a European wage. So in Morocco, that was really nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was there something else? Oh, this is going to kind of lead into the last part of the conversation, but something that we want to talk about again to set that up was there in Morocco. I think you said it's Morocco specifically, or more so than maybe other parts of the country, or that part of the world. Was their belief in what is a Djinn? Did I track that right?
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is? I think everybody knows that Djinn, or is in the Americanized version, is a genie.
Yeah.
But it's actually a real cultural thing in that part of the world. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah, sure. So Morocco, basically in the Islamic world, is pretty much like the magic capital of the world. Okay.
Like Las Vegas here?
It would be, yeah. Totally. So the Djinn, in Islam, there's belief in like three beings. There's angels, humans, and Djinn.
Isn't the perception of angels the same as a Christian perception of angels?
Yeah, except angels don't have free will. Okay. Whereas humans and Djinn have free will. So angels, whatever God says for an angel to do, they have to do. But the same angels are in existence, like Gabriel, Michael, Raphael. These angels are the same. Angels were made of light, and then Djinn are said to be made of fire, and humans are made of clay. So those are like the metaphorical elements or whatever that things are made of.
Say one more time. I just meant clay for humans. What are the other?
Jinn are made from fire.
From fire, okay.
Yeah, specifically a smokeless fire.
And then
angels are light.
They're light. Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So angels don't have free will, but Jinn and humans have free will. So the one main difference between Islam and Christianity is that in Christianity, there's the concept of like fallen angels, and that the devil is a fallen angel. But in Islam, that concept doesn't exist because angels don't have free will, so they can never disobey God. However, in Islam, the Jinn have free will, so the devil is the head Jinn in Islam. So
is that to imply that all Jinn are bad? Okay.
No, that's not. Yeah, okay. It just happens that the devil is a Jinn, not an angel. So Jinn, like I said, have free will. Jinn can take the forms of animals, other humans, different things. It's interesting. Something I like to always bring up when I talk about this type of stuff is that there's like a saying that one of the main form or popular forms that a Jinn likes to take is a black dog. So if you're doing something like and there's a black dog that comes by you, and you tell it to go, and it doesn't leave you or something, that the belief is that it's probably like a Jinn then, and like a bad Jinn,
Gotcha.
But when you think, I don't know, you might remember this, but you remember the Son of Sam back in the 80s, the murderer?
The dog told him to get it.
Yeah, the black dog in his backyard was telling him, and
Holy
no one
shit.
believed it. So, it's kind of weird,
Right.
coincidence or whatever, you know what I mean? But when I learned about this being of the same mind type, I was like, holy crap, you know, like Son of Sam. And you know, I'm into watching these movies anyway. But
what is the, like, everybody here knows the Americanized version of what a genie is, and they grant wishes and all
Yeah.
that. What is their, in that culture, what is the perception of power or ability that they have?
well, there's multiple types of jinn.
Okay.
Like there's the biggest one is called like an ifrit, which would be like,
I've heard that term before. I don't know
yeah,
where.
it's like a popular, like in myths and stuff. But that would be like the effect of, like the Balrog in Lord of the Rings. You know,
Okay.
like a big flying jinn. But their characteristic in general is like trickster, but like not intentionally trying to mess stuff up, but just they are like, I don't know if dumber is the word, but like in our thing, like we were talking, if you try to, like when you have the genie in the lamp and you make a wish, you'll get the wish, but it will be not exactly the wish.
Right.
But that's how their mental state is. Like they might not intentionally do that either, but that's just like they're naive or childlike, you know, and they're like, well, you asked for this and I'm giving it to you. So that's like their nature. But they do have bad, like there are, since they have free will, they can choose to be bad. They can choose to be good. They can choose to be Muslim or Jew or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's also the belief that like I was explaining before, that in Islam, every person has a jinn companion that is with them during their life. And so when people do things like a seance or something like this, you're talking to that jinn companion, not like the dead person. In Islam, we believe that when you die, there's no coming back to this earth or whatever. You move on to the next state of existence. But the jinn, their lifespan can be thousands of years, so they can be around much longer. And then therefore, if you were to have like a psychic or all these hauntings and stuff, they're jinn, they're not ghosts.
Right.
I mean, in America we call them ghosts, but our vision of ghost is like dead people, the spirits of dead people. But from an Islamic point of view, they are just a race of spirit beings that have their own identity, not, you know, in any way a dead person.
Totally kind of random question. How does somebody who is a practicing Muslim then, how do they perceive a movie like Aladdin?
Yeah, it's
Is
very...
is it funny to them? Is it,
Well, I mean...
is it scary? Is it like, wow,
No,
they're making a joke of this shit?
I always hated that movie to myself, to be personally. And it wasn't so much... I don't think it's scary, but our society has gone so far. I don't want to say in general or so far, but we're on this trend that science and like this type of thing, anything supernatural is like fake or hokey, you know? So it's easy to make fun of this, without taking to account like that, whether you believe it or not, but let's be skeptical and say, perhaps this is real,
Right.
you know? So are you going to rub that lamp, you know? And if you're taught, like, because, you know, you watched a cartoon and a blue genie comes out of it, you're going to rub it and, you know, have dancing, you know, whatever the genie's name, you know,
Right.
That's kind of a little bit like, I don't know if it's scary, but it's weird, you know. For
Right.
me, I can only speak for me since I converted to Islam.
I was going to say, for somebody who's born into it,
it might be different.
It's going to be a whole different probably perception.
And they might just think like, this is stupid. Like, why would you make this, you know? Like it's different, I guess, if you were to read like Arabian Nights, like 1001 Arabian Nights, where Aladdin, like those stories are more real, you know, like fantasy or whatever, but the Disney version is just kind of weird. I had more issues with the fact that in like the Disney cartoon, Jasmine is just like wearing a halter top and stuff.
Oh yeah, because that goes against.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Muslim
like,
teachings.
really, like
Too revealing.
you know, yeah.
Wasn't there? I don't know. I may be making this up. Wasn't there a horror movie, not cartoon, real life horror movie called Genie?
There was. It was called Djinn. I never watched it though.
Djinn.
Yeah. I never
I haven't
watched
either.
it. Yeah.
I want to now because I want to see what the interpretation is.
I remember when it came out. It came only a couple of years ago or something.
Was it?
Out.
Okay.
I think so.
I gotta find it. Maybe on Netflix right now. Who knows?
Yeah, I never watched it either, but I wanted to, and then I just never got around to it.
Okay.
But it is magic. So in Morocco and stuff, in Islam also magic is real. So that was one thing that
Now when you say magic,
we're talking about like casting spells.
casting spells.
Like,
Okay.
which was one of the things that led me to accept Islam, because I believed in magic. You know,
Okay.
I am a huge, not fan, but I read a lot about magic.
Okay.
Even now, I read a lot about like Middle Eastern magic and this type of stuff.
Now, is there a perception of magic? Is it good magic and bad magic? Is it like black and magic here, or
Yeah,
some of the cultural stuff that we have? And
no, it's pretty much all bad.
okay,
Yeah, there's
so
no.
you're not looked at as a awesome magician because you can do
you're
magic.
not.
It's
because
it's counter to
yeah,
the Muslim teaching. Is that
it's not counter, but it's one of the things. If you're caught practicing magic, you basically can get executed. Like if we had like an Islamic, like back in the day, like during the Ottoman Empire in the medieval times, the magicians were, if they caught you practicing, you were executed. And the reason is because it's such a slick and devious thing you can do. Like you can totally screw someone up and they would never know. Like you can be like miles away and like screwing up relationships and stuff. You know what I mean?
right?
So because of that, it's like looked at like so badly. And you're, instead of like going with like the decree of God and following like what's kind of like letting that path go, you're kind of like trying to interrupt that path. You know what I mean? By like using magic to
Influencing the will of God.
Yeah.
Holy
So
cow. Well, do magicians perform in Middle Eastern countries?
yeah, they
Is that that's different because they know it's a trick, it's a fake thing.
Yeah, but this was crazy. Like when I was in Marrakesh, they had like a magic show in like a David Copperfield type of show. In the middle like of the square, there's this famous square called Jemal Efna, and they had like a stage and did a magic show. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, this is like absolutely crazy that there's people, you know, like watching this. But they do though delineate that it's fake, you know. But technically, if we're really getting like down to the wire on technical, it is fake, but it's like still a type of magic in the sense that it's an illusion and you're still deceiving someone, you know, even though you know it's fake, you know what I mean? You still like,
I would have to think in a more rigid religion.
Yeah, like we're
dominant
talking
society.
yeah. But even Morocco's pretty open. But if we're taking like strict, like let's break this down, like theologically or whatever, the person can still, like, you know, the best magicians, like if you watch like Chris Angel, or I don't know who the newer people are now, but he was like the newest guy I watched back then, you know. You still don't know how they did the tricks, you know, so it's still deception, even though it's entertainment or whatever, you know. So,
Gotcha.
but it wouldn't be the level like where people, like, I'll give you an example. Typically, there's a way that magicians cast spells where they blow on knots. So they'll tie knots in ropes and blow on it. And that's like a way to do a spell. And that is actually like mentioned in the Quran as like a form of magic, you know?
Really?
So these are the types of things that like Morocco is really steeped in magic and like this type of magic.
I had no clue about
that. Which we would call black magic, you know, but in Islam, there's no white magic, you know, there's just magic in general. And it's specifically listed as one of the things that the greatest sins and one thing that will remove you from Islam if you are practicing it.
Gotcha.
So it's pretty serious, but it's fascinating. It's a fascinating subject. And in our time period, we don't even like, it took me like a while to like dig up books that even talk about it, you know, because from an Islamic perspective, there's this view, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. You know what I mean? Like it's not that it's not
does
that
anyone
it's,
even acknowledged?
Yeah.
Okay.
And not that it's like forbidden knowledge and stuff, but it's like people,
you accredit the power by acknowledging
yeah,
it
exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, but how would I ever like learn about this to know if someone's doing magic or not if I don't like read about it?
Or maybe
know?
it's a temptation if you talk about it too much.
It'll, you know, you'll
tempt
get it,
people to want to
or maybe you
themselves.
might like get, by you reading it, you'll be tempted to, you know,
Practice.
do whatever. Yeah. Which I kind of get, but you know, at the same time, whatever. But then you have that aspect, but then you have on top of it, our modern society in general is kind of like magic don't exist and blah, you know, like the general thing.
The idea has got to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You know, so.
Well, in essence of time, and this kind of leads into a modern interpretation of take of it as it affected you. Speeding up time a little bit here, you were in contact with this beautiful woman that you fell in love with.
Yeah,
who was living here in Minnesota. You guys decide to create a relationship together. You leave where you're living. You were in Morocco when you guys decided to live. You decide to come back, be with her, marry her, and you're living together. And she suffers from epilepsy.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'll just turn it back over to you there. A weird instance happened where...
Yeah, we can... Yeah. So, my wife has epilepsy. And so one evening she had a grand mal seizure, which I had never seen happen. I had seen seizures, obviously the first time she had a seizure. I became educated about epilepsy, basically.
Right.
So at this level of seizure was really intense, and she sat up in the bed and was like, basically like, you know,
kind of spinning around.
Yeah, spinning around and like slapping like on the bed, but she was speaking at the time, which she has never done in a seizure to me. Like normally a typical seizure is like passing out and convulsing a little bit and your eyes flutter and you're non-responsive. But she had spoke and was like, call the ambulance or whatever. So that was kind of, I don't want to say frightening, but it was unnerving to me. Mm-hmm. So then what happened after that, I'm assuming the ambulance came and stuff like this, and she might even went to the hospital overnight. But when she came back, the next day, I remember waking up, or she must have came back and then we went to bed, and whatever it was, the next time we woke up in the bed together and it was morning, we were woke up by our son coming in the bedroom, and he was like tapping my wife on the shoulder or something, and she woke up and she was like, well, just come into bed with us. And he was like, I will, but I'm scared of that thing on your head. And my wife was like, what thing? And I woke up and looked, and there was like a bat on my wife's head. And when my wife stood up, a real live bat, a brown bat, he like flapped and like flew like right out of our bedroom, and like down the steps to the basement, and like in one direct line. And my wife instantly was like, I think that's like the Djinn, because my wife this
is going back to them can assume shapes and
yeah,
different things.
exactly, yeah. And my wife and me too, like, since we believe in the Djinn and just like weird things that would happen, like my wife kind of thinks that basically that there's been Djinn around us. So the bat goes there, and then my wife is like, what's interesting is that like all night I felt like something like going like I don't know how to describe this motion, like the bat feet like pulling at her hair. And when we had like a mirror, when she would look in the mirror at night, like with the lights out, it looked like some like wispy thing, which was, I mean, you can say, was it the bat? Like obviously it was the bat on her head, but if you couldn't see the bat in the mirror, maybe it was just because it was dark or whatever, but who knows, So we followed the bat, and I followed it, and it found that there was a little hole in the basement where we have a finished basement, and it could get between like the floors of the crawl space between the floors. So it was in there, and I kind of heard it, and I had like some Quran on my phone, like you can listen to it, like the audio recitation. So I was pounding on the ceiling trying to get it, and I was like holding my phone and like playing Quran. I'm thinking that might do something to the bat if it's like some demon or something.
Was there something specific, a prayer or something? Just out of curiosity.
There is, in the Quran, there are specific verses you can read that are suggested to read for this. But in general, any part of the Quran you can recite. If you just recite the Quran, whatever you know or whatever, it's beneficial.
Is it like a perception of protection?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
okay.
Or like it's kind of like
removing bad spirits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you're bad and you hear this, there's a concept called like your fitra, which is every human's natural disposition. When your natural disposition hears the Quran, it triggers it. You're like, you know what I mean? You're like triggered into a response where if you're bad, it's to repel, like to leave,
I have the same effect like when I hear country music. It's like
you
drive me out of your house.
Same with me.
I'm lying. Obviously, it doesn't work. My girlfriend loves country music.
But in any case, that I did that. And so on the second, I was like, well, what are we going to do? It's gone. And my wife was kind of wigged out about it and whatnot. So then the second day, I'm at work the next day, and my wife calls me, and she was like, the bat's back, and he's like attacking me, or it's attacking me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was like, it's like chasing me around the house, and it's like following me. And I went in the basement, and it came down, and it's just like circling above my head and like trying to like dive bomb me. So I was like, all right, well, when I get home, I was like, try to lock it down there. When I get home, I'll try to get it out. So she, I guess it went back in the crawl space by the time I got home again. So now my wife's like all freaked out. And so the next day, I go to work, and her friend comes by, and they call me, and like the bat's back, and they were like hiding under this blanket, and it was dive bombing my wife,
Specifically.
Specifically. And she had bruises on her arm. I got photos of the bruise. I don't know if I brought them on my phone, but so she was like completely wigged out. And her son, my stepson, had kind of like chased it back to where the little hole was, and we have a fireplace there, like a gas fireplace. So there's like the mantle, and it stood on the mantle and like spread its wings and was hissing at like him and stuff. So it's like totally
creepy.
like freaked out, It's like acting like not like a bat in any way,
Right.
So I get home now, and they have this like sheet hanging over the stairs to keep it in the basement. And I go down there and the bat's like flapping around and everything. So my wife was hiding under the covers, and I tell my wife, get out, go up there and we'll try to get it out. So me and my stepson, we get the bat out. This is the middle of winter, so we get it. We have the door is like a glass door, like a sliding glass door. So we get it to the door, and we open the door and get it to go outside. So it's outside, but it's like perched now because it's freezing cold out there. It's like right hanging on the opposite side of the glass door. So I tell my son, I'm just going to reach over here and get a piece of cardboard to try to, slide through the crack in the door, open it a crack and slide the cardboard to push it out so it flies away. And as soon as I turn around, the bat's back in the house. So I'm like, what the hell did you do? Like, did you open the door? Why'd you open the door? And he's like, I didn't open the door. And I'm like, how the hell did the bat get back in the house? He's like, I don't know. It just like came back in. And I'm like, I'm like, all right, whatever, So I was like, we got to kill this bat now, and because it was freaky to me. Like, that was like one of those moments where my brain's like, the door was closed, the bat was there, there's no possible way, like the crack was open enough for a bat to get in, you know what I mean? Like, so I was just like, all right, this is a whole event has been extremely weird. We're killing this bat. So I said, go get your pellet gun. He wanted to get like the 10 gauge or the 20 gauge. And I'm like, no.
That's a little overkill.
Yeah, I don't want like a hole in the wall, like blasted it, So I have to get the pellet gun. Could take it out with that.
12 holes in the plaster later. Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. The neighbors are called the cops and stuff,
Right.
So I like had this like spotlight, and I was like, all right, I'm going to like aim the spotlight at it, and you like take the shot at it. So I'm doing that. It lands. I like flick the light on it. He like shoots and misses, and he's like, I'm like, how can you miss? It's only like 10 feet away.
Right,
you know what I mean? So the second shot, he nails it. It like falls dead on the ground, and it's like blood pulling out, and it's
Right.
So no one wants to touch it, and I'm like, we need to get this bat out. So I wrap it up in a towel, and I'm like, look, we're burning this thing, So I go out. There's like 2 feet of snow. I go out, dig out the fire pit, throw that in there, and just light it up. And I remember my stepson was out there with me. He still has his. I think he went and got like 5 guns now or something. And we're like, I was like, if something comes out of this,
right,
because I had the gun now too,
Right.
I was like, if something comes out of this fire pit, we just unload on whatever comes leaping out of this pit with this fire, Yeah, so that happened. So which was weird,
Right.
And I'll tell the next part, and then we can just mention like the little science and skepticism about it. Yeah. So after that, like the day or two following that, my wife and I were talking, and she kind of thought that she had like I decided to do ruqya, which is like an exorcism.
Okay.
But
this is the Muslim take on exorcism.
Exorcism, yeah.
Say the name again one more time.
Ruqya.
Ruqya.
Yeah. And I had seen an exorcism done in Morocco when I was living there. So basically what I did with my wife was she laid down and I recited certain Quran.
So it was her interpretation that, again, she think that may have been a jinn.
Yeah.
The bat is the jinn in bat form.
Yeah. And perhaps
some kind of...
Yeah, perhaps there's still some... She felt weird. Like something was wrong with her.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's like some jinn in you.
Okay.
Or whatever, maybe there's a jinn around here or something. So I laid her down and we did the ruqya, which is basically you just recite certain parts of the Quran.
specifically
for
this process.
Yeah. And you talk with the person. So my wife, now that I remember, actually, my wife prior to this was having weird dreams and had thought like someone was talking to her in her dreams and stuff. It was like a lot of weirdness like that she was feeling and experiencing. So when we were doing the rukia, she started coughing and being like, "Don't you smell that smoke?" And like she was like, "I taste like this charcoal and stuff." And there wasn't any smoke, and the charcoal. She was like, it was weird,
And just to remind me, there's no process. There's no anointing oils. There's no anything like that other than just reading passages specific for this. Okay.
Yeah. There are, like you can in your house, like there's like, I don't want to say they're trinkets, but you can have verses from the Quran, like in calligraphy and stuff, people make as like wards or something. Like that's very like cultural to different regions of the world, but it's not really specific.
Would it be kind of along the lines of like burning, like in the Native American, burning sage to help drive out spirits?
Okay. You can have that stuff in your house, and some people do, some people don't. But in this instance, to do this, you don't need anything.
Right.
Like you can, even to non-Muslims, you can do it. So the experience was weird. She had like a really reaction to it. She, like I said, she was coughing and thought she heard stuff and was smelling the smoke and had this like taste of coal in her mouth and stuff, which, goes in line with if a Djinn is made of fire, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like the thing, you know what I mean? So after this, we did this twice too. We did 2 of them.
In a row or next day?
It was like the next day or like a couple days after or something. It was weird to me. Like I was kind of unnerved by it, but since then, that was probably about 5 years ago. Nothing has happened from that. Okay. So whether or not that was effective, my wife since then has gotten a vagus nerve stimulator, which you can Google what this is, but it basically stops seizures from happening.
Okay.
So she hasn't really had a seizure since then. And in hindsight, I saw, like we had talked about the bat and everything. Perhaps when you have a seizure, your brain emits like some sort of radio waves or something.
Frequency of some kind that a bat can interpret and maybe draw them in.
Yeah.
Which is, would have been a scientific
possibility. Yeah. And I believe that I read about 2 or 3 months ago that they discovered bats can draw upon like brain waves. They can like get attracted to them in this type of situation. So,
and as we were saying prior to recording, if you're going through a seizure, your
brain's
going to be sending out some wild brain waves. So
yeah, and it was weird. The weird, which is possible. I'm not discounting that.
Right.
Like we said in the pre-thing, Islam acknowledges that people have seizures, so it's not like you're always possessed. Like possession is viewed as after you've eliminated every scientific thing. Okay, now go, maybe there's this other stuff that you might want to try. But, was that the case? It was weird. A lot of weird events happen around one time. Why would, if your brain is emitting that during a seizure, does it continue to emit it days afterwards? So it's weird. Or, what I had thought of after, and my wife's probably going to listen to this and probably be like completely wigged out when I say this. Perhaps like I'm the one who's like possessed or something, you know what I mean? And like maybe like my grandmother, you know what I'm saying? Like the whole time, this is it, you know what I mean? So who knows,
Maybe your grandma's still mad about the whole Muslim thing. Yeah. She's like sent
or maybe she saw like
you guys
or maybe what I'm saying is that maybe like she saw like the black cloud being like some like weird like spirit Djinn attachment. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of thing. And maybe like
within the realm of the spiritual possibilities, there's limitless amounts of where that could be.
And so like all these events, like we attribute to my wife because she has these epilepsy, which is like unfortunately epilepsy gets this rap of this type of thing, but perhaps it's me, who is really the issue, or you know what I mean? So it's a lot of like weird things, that are possible, I guess, if we opening the door to these possibilities.
That's wild.
Yeah. She'll probably be wigged out about that, though.
I'm a little wigged out about it. My snakes cool? Yeah, they're good.
They're cool. No. Well, of course they would be, because they're like, Djinn. Oh, that's one reason why we got rid of the snakes, because that was like a form the Djinn take.
Really?
And I was like, to my wife, I was like, look,
that one's bit me more often than the other ones have. That one over there to your right.
But my wife had snakes when we first got together. She had ball pythons too, and that was my thing. I was like, man, what if we're like, who knows? You know what I mean? So we were just like, snakes are a form the Djinn take, and there's like an old saying that if you see one like in your house, obviously it'd be weird in Minnesota if we saw a snake in our house. But I guess if you're living in like the desert or environments where there's snakes, you're supposed to tell it to leave like 3 times. And if it don't leave on the 3rd time, you can kill it, because it's probably like a Djinn in an animal form.
All right. Well, these snakes don't listen to me at all. So
maybe they are. I mean, look at it.
Yeah. Dude, your life is an amazing story. It really is. This is going to be a very popular episode, because it covers the spectrum of everything, man.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah,
this is I've been entertained, I've been educated, and freaked out. I still had 9/11 goosebumps from that story. Now I got goosebumps like, holy shit, my snakes are genies. So who knows?
Well, the dog didn't attack me or nothing, so the snakes are cool. Well, that one's actually, his head's there, it's moving now. Yeah, so it's looking at me.
It's their active time of night. Yeah. So. But thank you for taking the time to share this with me and with the audience, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Holy shit. Right? Did you like that episode? Was it everything that I promised you? Did you keep a running checklist of all the items I mentioned in the beginning that were going to be covered in this episode? Did you check them all off? Because they were all in there as promised and delivered right here on the Filter Free America podcast. Big thank you to Isa for coming in, having that conversation with me. It was a blast to have the conversation. Super nice dude, super wonderful human being. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation, man. That's crazy that one person's life could go through those many different events and changes and all that. And yeah, regardless of what you think about religion and different belief systems and all that stuff, you must admit that it's fucking interesting just to hear, the different dynamics of his particular religion and his particular beliefs, especially when it includes motherfucking genies, right? That's, I don't know. I didn't know that, right? I'm one of those people that pride themselves on knowing just a little bit about everything. I don't know a lot about nothing. Right, but I just know a little bit of shit. Okay, I didn't know fucking genies were involved with Muslims. I didn't know that. I don't know why I didn't know that. I probably should have known that. I don't know. I mean, all I know is that I have expanded my wealth of knowledge from that episode, and fucking that was a good one. I'm really, really happy we had that one. Anything else I need to cover on the outro here? Nah, that's it. Make sure you support the podcast by going to simplewebsite.us, checking them out. Also, another reminder, like in the intro, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Also, if you're a Facebook user, and most of you are, make sure you go to Filter Free America, or the Filter Free America podcast Facebook page. It will say Filter Free America podcast. That's the page. That's the one you like. You can even leave a review there. I always post stuff about episodes, and I post fucking funny shit that I find online. And it's a good way to contact me if you wish to contact me. But whatever. If you don't want to, it's fine too. Just listen to the show. Could care less. But I love you guys. I love each and every one of you. Some of you, obviously, I love more than others, right? Some of you I'd be willing to have sex with. Some of you I would just hug. Some of you I would sit across the table from you and give you kind of like a weird, like a fucking accusatory eye wink. I'm like, kind of thing, like, fuck you. But whatever. But you're all good people. You're all good human beings. And please go out in the world and express your fellow mutual affection for other human beings some way this week, right? Go out, help somebody, see somebody on the side of the road, their tires flat, and you are strong enough to help them or skilled enough to help them. Do that, right? Do something for somebody. I don't know. Put some positive energy in the world and help keep the genies away, all right? Because you don't want any genies turning into bats and fucking you up. Make sure you guys spade neuter your pets and children. Make sure you keep seeking the truth. And I love you, and I will talk to you in the next episode of Filter Free America. Bye-bye.